This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Is there something interfering with your happiness or is preventing you from achieving your goals?
Usually, yes.
Well, BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist.
Yeah, you can start communicating in under 48 hours. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional counseling done securely online.
Yeah, a friend of mine's doing it. She said she reached out to them and they got back with her right away.
Yeah, I think it's great. You get to avoid the uncomfortable waiting rooms. You can do it from anywhere in the world, and there's all kinds of counselors to choose from.
Yeah, you'll get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions, so you won't ever have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room like you said.
There you go. And it's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available, which is very cool.
Oh, sweet. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today, so visit their website and use our promo code.
And what is that promo code?
MIF. That stands for Music is Funny.
Yes. So if you use our code, it gets you 10% off the first month.
Yeah, go to www.betterhelp.com/MIF.
And that's BetterHelp, HELP.
.com/myth. This podcast is also sponsored by Pure Spectrum CBD.
Yeah, CBD is a big thing right now. I mean, they sell it in gas stations. You can buy it, anywhere, and it's kind of an unregulated industry.
Yeah, I had a weird experience where I got some Delta 8 gummies, and it was such a trip. It was not safe.
Right. If you go to Pure Spectrum CBD, you can trust these guys. They're from Colorado. They've been doing this for a long time. Everything's tested. They come from, I think it's a family farm in Colorado. So, CBD is great. It's great for aches and pains, all kinds of stuff.
Anxiety.
Yeah. And if you get it from Pure Spectrum CBD, you're not going to fail a drug test. You're not going to get high. It is pure CBD, just the medicinal qualities, and you can trust that.
Yeah, CBD is one cannabinoid away from THC, but it's not the psychoactive cannabinoid. So it's just all the healing properties of cannabis without getting high.
That part's kind of a bummer. But for those that don't want to get high, these guys are the one to go to get all of your CBD products. You can trust them. They've been around forever. And you can save some money with our promo code.
MIF10. So go to purespectrum.com/MIF10 to get 10% off all your orders.
And that's MIF, MIF 10. Stands for Music is Funny, but it's shorthand. So anyway, check out Pure Spectrum CBD. And now, on to the show.
I take my $800 Canadian, I turn it into $600 American, and I buy a train ticket to New York City.
Live from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raylan Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
I'm still smoking, I'm so high, I keep toking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too.
Welcome back to Music is Funny. I'm Raylan Nelson.
And I'm Jonathan Bright from the Raylan Nelson Band. And we're back with another one.
No, wait. Before you start saying that, our intros are dumb and stuff, I need to say that you guys might recognize me from the Dose of Dr. Drew show.
Oh, here we go.
Be sure to check that out this week. It's somewhere on the YouTubes. I guess he was actually canceled from the YouTube and they couldn't put anything up until this week. So.
Oh, is that the deal?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it was on Facebook too, so you can find it there. Dose of Dr. Drew.
Yeah. So basically,
you and William Shatner, right?
Yeah, me and Shat.
There you go.
So check that out. Also, I got to go to the Comedy Store in Los Angeles thanks to Ryan Sickler.
Here we go.
And
yes.
I met Bobby Lee, shook his hand. And met Amy Letterman, but she didn't like me. She kind of just didn't even say hi, but gave me that elbow thing.
Oh, that's sad. Anyway, intros are still stupid.
I also got to do, I also got to do the ghost tour at the Comedy Store that Steve Simone gave me. Our buddy Steve Simone.
Yep. And you did Ryan Sickler's podcast.
The Honeydew podcast, which is coming out in like 3 weeks or something.
Intros are still boring and too long and stupid.
Ian Bagg. Ian.
Hey, how are you?
Hi.
Nice.
And it's working immediately. Amazing.
Yeah, it is. Everything's recording. And this is my music partner, guitar player, friend, JB.
Hi, JB. How are you?
Nice to meet you, brother.
Nice to meet you. I'm just going to move my hair. Okay.
I'm Raylan, and we're at
nice to meet
my grandpa's museum. This is
Are you in his museum?
Yeah, in Nashville.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's 4,200 square feet of
Pure ecstasy.
yeah.
Exactly.
Nice.
So we usually start these things off by asking like what kind of music fan you are or how young you got into it or, you know.
Goodness. That's the we're going to start right there.
Right in there.
Okay. I'll tell you right now. It's funny because I was listening to Spotify the other day, and I'm just trying to move my camera around. I apologize. Is this just audio or is it video as well?
Video too.
Okay, I'll just make sure my giant head gets in there. So I was listening to Spotify the other day, and a Glenn Campbell song came on.
Oh yeah.
And it was one of the first songs that I ever listened to, and it was part of an album that my parents bought, a K-Tel album. Do you remember those?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was back in the day, and where you get probably 8 different genres.
Yeah, it's like compilation albums. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I remember. I remember being it was Glenn Campbell, Cheap Trick. That was the one that really got me.
Love Cheap Trick.
I think it was Surrender or Dream Police. I can't remember. It was one of those. And then what else was on that? Oh my God. I think Boney M was on that. You remember them?
Oh, yeah, that was a very eclectic K-Tel record there.
It was crazy that I had that. And then my parents used to listen to all this like 1950s country music, and it used to drive me nuts because I thought it was a rocker.
I hated that shit as a kid. And once I got older, I started going back and refound Hank Williams. I'm like, oh wait, there's something here.
Yeah, it's weird, right? You're when you're a kid, you're like, no, this is stupid. I don't know why anybody would listen to this. They're just whining.
Well, see, when I was a kid, my mom kept me pretty sheltered. So I was only allowed to listen to contemporary Christian music or gospel or old country.
I just don't know how how it as Christian and contemporary at the same time.
Not my favorite genre, that's for sure.
Yeah, no. I was like, how did they cross those? How were they able to get those two to cross over? I don't think so. So, your mom definitely kept you sheltered.
Yeah, it just wasn't hymns, it was, it was like pot.
Like DC Talk.
Can you even say, I made you listen to DC Talk the other day. DC Talk, I was huge into DC Talk, and Jennifer Knapp, she was a singer-songwriter. She had cool songs. I've played your songs.
Yeah,
she's cool.
We were going to a gig the other day, and she made us listen to a DC Talk song, and it's hilarious. It was basically a Nirvana sound-alike, so you could put it in its place. And I think that's what they do. They just find whatever's popular at the time, and sing about Jesus, and there you go.
Wasn't Striper kind of like that? Do you remember they were a heavy metal band?
Oh yeah,
back they were kind of the same way.
And they still go out and play. I think the metal guys didn't completely write them off, which is strange, but yeah, they're still out touring, I believe.
Really, that's crazy. I thought they were just a gimmick. I had no idea that they continued on.
Well.
So are you still a DC? What is it?
God no. I don't even know why I brought it up in the van the other day. I was just like, do you remember Jesus Freak from DC Talk? And they were like, no.
It was just more information to pile on her about. Oh, you like this too? Great.
Oh my God.
Absolutely not.
Here's the other half of AC/DC. This is DC Talk.
So that's what you listened to as a kid. Did you continue liking music, or was it just kind of a casual thing?
I love the music. So I played snare drum in the school band.
Hey, me too.
Yeah. So I like freaking out whenever so often I work with bands, and I'll go over and just snare drum, just do a bunch of paradiddles, and so yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Rudiments. Like paradiddle.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's also what I do on the weekends when I'm alone.
Hey-o.
With my wife, paradiddle.
Paradiddle bag.
Paradiddle bag. And yeah, music. It's funny. I remember being in high school and hearing a song, going from one class to another class, and a bunch of kids were on the soccer field and they were listening to music, and that song was so amazing, but I have never figured out what that song was. So there's just this song that was incredible in my head that I have no idea who it was. I've never been able to put it together to another situation ever again.
Wow, that's crazy.
Can you sing it?
No, No, it's one of those things. It's in your head, but you can't get it out there. So I could listen to 100 things and say, I don't know if it's like that or anything. I just remember the emotion it gave me. And I was just like, I love that.
Yeah.
So,
You remember how music makes you feel for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Is your grandfather really that tall?
Actually, if you stay,
Oh yeah. Hold on. I don't think it's actually life size. Oh no. Well, maybe.
yeah,
maybe,
that's probably
yeah.
about right.
Yeah.
He's probably my height. I'm 5'7.5", 5. He's probably 5'8", or was at one point.
I met him once and had a picture taken with him.
Oh,
I was doing a show in Tahoe, and I was a show before and he was a show afterwards. And we took a picture together. And then my parents' friends actually photoshopped their head onto my body, so it looked like they had a picture with him.
That is hilarious.
Because they're huge Willie Nelson fans. So
Speaking of that, let's get into some comedy too. You start how young did you?
I don't like it.
Yeah. From Canada. So you started in Canada, and I love the sensibility. Canadian humor cracks me. I don't know if that's a thing, Canadian humor, but
I think it is.
the kids in the hall, Norm Macdonald, all those guys. It's a left of center approach that seems to come up there.
Here's the thing that I think about Canadian comedy. I think it's influenced by Britain more, right? So it's got a British influence, but then we are also influenced by America, but we're just outside of America. So we have a little bit of skew on it, right?
Right.
So it's got its own thing, Canadian humor going on. You got to be able to sit on the bus when you're playing hockey to drive to a town 8 hours away with no entertainment in the vehicle and be able to entertain each other and chirp. So,
and I assume you played hockey coming up.
We all did, except for the rich kids. They skied.
There you go. So what did you play? Defense, enforcer?
I was defense. And then on power plays, I would be set in front of the net to cause all sorts of trouble.
So people hated you on the other team. Perfect.
Oh yeah. I used to get into fights and beaten up and kicked in the head. And yeah. And then I was about 16 and I went to a camp and I had to fight a guy with a full grown beard. And he punched me in the face many times. And I said, I'm done playing hockey. I just want to be a comedian.
That'll do it. So you were into comedy as a kid then?
I was. So two of the albums that my parents had, they had Bill Cosby, Why Is There Air? And then they also had one from Jonathan Winters.
Oh, yeah.
And I would listen to those over and over again. So they just kind of pushed that comedy was pushed into me. And I just wanted to make people laugh. I loved the painting they could draw with their mind and words, So I just I could see it. I could see everything they said.
So you had kind of an idea as a kid that comedy you could do something with it other than they had a career they were doing. Did you have that in your mind when you were thinking, I want to do comedy?
So I did, but I grew up near Alaska. I grew up in a small town called Terrace, British Columbia, which is, you drive to Prince George, which takes about 12 hours from Vancouver. And then you take a left and then you drive another 8 to 9 hours to Prince Rupert. Wow. And then you come back an hour and then you're in Terrace. So
not a lot of comedians were touring through there is what you're trying to say. Nothing. And for me to want to be able to do that, there was nothing. There was a couple musicians, but there was nothing that told me I could do that. To me, in my head, you got into show business by walking along the street, just like an Archie comic, and a limousine pulled up and told you that you should be in show business. That's how I thought it worked. So, and we didn't even have a limousine in our town, so I knew I wasn't getting into show business.
Was it a country town? Was it like a city?
No, it was about 10,000 people, middle of nowhere, lumber, mining and fishing.
Yeah.
Frigid cold.
Stupid cold. What people don't think is up there, it's a rainforest, right? Mm-hmm. But it's the temperature is on the other side of a rainforest. It's not a warm rainforest. It's a cold rainforest. So my shoes were always torn up from the rain. I always had wet bottoms of my jeans. It was just always, you were always cold.
So I assume when you
now my parents think about pussy because I live in Los Angeles.
Are your folks is your family still there?
Yeah, my mom and dad still live there. My dad's 81 and my mom's 79. So
have they come to visit in Los Angeles and still want to go back?
They do. They used to come visit me, and yes, my mom liked it. My dad was okay when I was here, but then he'd get to that point. Well, we got to go home now. You never know. Somebody might have looked in the window. We got to go home now. So he died, and then he got to an age where he's just like, I don't like to travel anymore. So he likes to be at home.
Right. Well, you've been doing this for a very long time. So when you started,
how did you start it?
Yeah.
How did you get into it?
Well,
you're in the middle of
you
nowhere.
had to get out, I assume.
I did have to get out. So it goes into music again. So we had a nightclub in the Terrace Hotel, and I think it was called Gators or something like that. And they would bring bands in from all over Canada. And I went and seen this band once, and I was watching them, and somehow I ended up talking to them. And the one guy said, "You're funny." And I said, "Yeah, I want to be a comedian." And he's like, "Well, you got to move from here." I said, "Well, I get that, but I don't really know how to become a comedian." He goes, "I know a comedian. I'll let you talk to him." So he let me talk to him on the phone. And this is like on a payphone. And I was like, "Oh," he's like, "You got to move and you got to do amateur nights." And I'm like, "Okay, all right." And then about a year later, I was like, I want to do that, but it still doesn't make sense. Like I was working in a gold mine, working with explosives. So I was as far away from show business as you can get. And then all of a sudden I was going to go to school in Vancouver to become an explosives engineer. And I went down there and I ended up not going to school. I ended up trying an open mic and didn't ever go back to school. So I was just completely addicted.
Wow. Were you into explosives though? Was that a cool job for you, or was it something you were trying to get away from?
No, it was. So I'm 19 years old, and I get a job with a dynamite company, and I start at the bottom of the company where I'm loading explosives into a truck, and they're delivering it to mines and logging businesses all over the north. And then from there, they ended up teaching me how to drive trucks. And from there, I ended up actually in a gold mine setting blasting patterns. And then they were like, if you want to go further, you have to go to school. And I'm like, I want to go further. So, and I was making so much money as a kid. It was stupid. So I'm like 20 years old, just making hand over fist money, stupid money. And so I went down there and I don't know. I'm sure you guys are the same way. Show business or being an artist is like heroin. Once you try it, you're either addicted or you're not.
Yeah.
So I was completely addicted immediately.
Does a gold mine look like what you think it does?
No.
Okay.
What do you? I don't know. I don't even know what you think of what it is.
Unless you think it's a gigantic hole in the ground, then
I picture
like tunneling in and gold around the
DuckTales. That's what I picture. You know, DuckTales.
There was no ducks. There was no ducks. There wasn't like there was
Donald Duck and
McScrooge
his
wasn't sitting up.
nephews.
Yeah. McScrooge is sitting up there with his little coat and no bottom on it. Come on, make me some money.
Well done, Ian. Well done.
It was an open pit mine, so we would just take off levels of soil and just get down to a certain area where the gold was, and they knew with putting their rods through where these veins of gold were. We weren't going into the mountain. We're just taking the land off.
So could you see it?
To get to the pay dirt. What's that?
You can't really see it.
It was pretty small. It was pretty small. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it wasn't just like big chunks.
Yeah. I know this isn't that interesting, but it's interesting to me.
So what did you?
It's interesting.
When you say you left to go do it, where? Still in Canada?
Vancouver. So I ended up in Vancouver, and I started on an open mic, and people thought it was funny pretty instantly. I started on a contest. And I had written all the jokes on my hands, and I was so nervous I sweat them off. So I ended up having to do impressions of fish and stuff like that with my hands, and it went well. And I thought, well, that was my chance. I didn't win the contest, so I guess I'll go back to mining is actually what I thought I would do. And by chance, the manager of the club said to me, "Hey, you should come back next week. This is a regular open mic. We'd love to have you." I was like, oh, okay. So I went back and just immediately just quit everything just to do stand-up.
Wow. So is there, what's the road like? Can you do the road in Canada? Are there spots like you do here in the States? There's probably not as many opportunities, but
Well,
as a beginning comic.
And I guess you had to get a shitty job, right? If you were going to just focus on.
Funny enough, I was working in a music store, just delivering instruments like pianos and stuff, and also just being the warehouse guy. So I was working in music. Music helped out me again. So helped me out again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever think, you play the drums? Have you ever thought about doing it professionally?
No, not that good.
No.
Are you sure? Are you sure? We're always looking for a drummer, so that's why she asks.
Yeah, drummers always fall apart. Oh, look at that! Somebody's just walking by, looking at things. That's no. I at one point I was like, oh, I want to be a rock star, like I think every kid does, and then instantly I was like, no, I want to be a comedian. So that's how it went that way immediately.
And what age was this roughly when you first started that first open mic?
Probably about 20, 21.
Yeah,
right. So
still pretty young. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty young. Still pretty young. Like a lot of guys start around that age. I wish I'd continued going to college and maybe took a marketing class or something. Who knew that you had to have all these other skills? I thought I just had to be funny. And what the question was, how do you do the road in Canada? It's so the towns are so far apart, and there's only like one club in Vancouver, then one club in Calgary, one club in Edmonton. So there's like 10 clubs across all of Canada, right? And then there was bars where they'd have comedy nights.
Right.
So I got to know the comedians, and I would, as an amateur, I would jump into their car and get a ride with them, or drive their car so they didn't have to drive for 5 minutes of stage time. So and I'd like travel 5 and 6 hours for 5 minutes worth of stage time. It was insane.
We've done the same thing. And I guess at that point, you're just taking gigs and trying to get as much stage time as you can and perfect your craft.
Yeah. I say when comedians ask me, I say, just do anything, everything, when you start, it's not quantity over quality. I mean, it's not quality over quantity. It's take everything. So later on in life, you're prepared for that situation, because there's nothing worse than seeing somebody that skipped all the shit. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but you skipped all the shit, and then they're at a place that's fantastic, but they run into the first little, I'm blanking on words. I apologize. I feel like I'm just like, did I have a stroke? The adversity, they just a little bit, and they fall apart, and it's, you need to be able to, like, I remember playing a baby shower. I remember playing weddings, just anything that anybody would let me on. And sometimes they wouldn't go good, but as you did it, you figured out ways to make people, laugh. And that's for the most part, before the internet, all the shows were me going into, I'll call these comics, going into a room of strangers and turning people that didn't know you into your best friend.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's kind of the same thing about starting a brand new band. You just go out there and get in front of as many people as you can, and especially because, I've been doing this for 30 years too in music. Pre-internet was a completely different thing. So different. And touring, you just went out untethered, no cell phones. You had a road atlas, and you were. I
didn't even think of that. Oh my God. That was a different, there was, nobody knew where you were.
No, you had.
It sounds so dangerous.
You had a dime or a quarter, depending on which area you're in. That's pretty much. And maybe if you were lucky, a calling card. Those things were like gold back in the day.
Calling cards.
Yes, calling cards. I remember also you would go do these bars, and they'd be set up by. They were called agents, but I don't know who they were. But you would have to pick up a bunch of money, and you got paid a little bit. And then you had to drop it off at the next gig for the next people or something like that. It was all this weird cash being moved around, and you driving it across.
It was always all cash too. Nobody got paid a check back then.
Yeah, it was great. That part was great.
Another thing too that I thought was similar to music is I've realized when you're up there playing, if you can just figure out how to get out of when you've messed up, and it just seems like you've just continued on, even though we've messed up. Yeah. That's the trick to it all, like how to get out of when you've messed up.
Right. And it's one of those things you learn, right? Is that nobody knows you've messed up except for you.
Yeah.
So
Most
are
of
you
the
gonna, are you going to make the big deal so everybody knows, or are you going to make it fun?
Yeah. And it's
So-
just experiences, the simplest things as breaking a string while you're playing. If you've never done that before, you got to know how to kill time or get around it. You know, I played in frat bands, all this kind of stuff. To your point, it's like kind of playing everywhere. And you get to a point where there's really nothing anybody can throw at you that you haven't dealt with something way the fuck worse, you know?
Yeah. It's all about, all about your learning your flight or fright. You know, it's the, are you gonna perform, or are you gonna just turn into a flower and die? So, which I think is important to somebody that wants to do live comedy or live any sort of entertainment.
Yeah, and I would think that nowadays it might be. I guess people could get to. We've seen it with like YouTube stars and stuff, but I think maybe with the internet, you could come up with some funny shit to put on the internet, and then be able to book yourself into clubs, maybe skipping some of the steps getting to that point. But it seems like that's going to crumble at some point. You know, if you get in there without paying your dues, you're going to run up against something. Like you said, first bit of adversity, you're going to be like, oh, hold on, what's happening? People don't like me.
Yeah. And trust me, people aren't going to like you.
Right.
We all know that. Like it's a part of it. I remember thinking, hearing, oh, you got to bomb 1,000 times before you're good, or something like that, and thinking, oh, I'm fine. And then bombing 1,000 times, and it's how do you get through that? How do you keep because and I know you guys know this, and I know we're supposed to be a little bit lighthearted on this, but mental health is huge in our business, and being able to not self-medicate, and being able to knowing when you got to stop being on the road, being around people, because we can end up becoming hermits, no problem being on the road, especially a comic. When young comics say, hey, what do you suggest when you're on the road? I'm like, always find a gym that is not in your hotel, because that way you're leaving the hotel.
Right. Force yourself.
Force yourself out. Otherwise, you can just spin yourself out of control, because all Hilton honors look the same.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's great with bands. You guys get to, and this must be difficult as well at the same time, having a camaraderie. Oh my God, I'm struggling with words today. I make my money doing
Words
talking.
are hard.
Words are hard. Please put that on a t-shirt. Just having to deal with other people, just having to put up with moods, and being able to help somebody else out, or be able to know when to walk away, or when to put your
we talk
earphones
about that, how we're lucky that we have each other on stage, and when it's going bad, we can just turn up louder or play whatever we want.
There's 4 people bombing at the same time, and you can just sort of.
You guys laugh. You guys laugh when you're bombing?
Yes.
Oh, totally.
Of course.
I kind of like it. And
I don't, but I laugh at the time. Later on, I'll block it out.
Well, it's kind of like when we were talking to Doug Stanhope. The only good stories are bomb stories. True. You have one best gig ever, and you're only going to have one story.
Like so many bombs.
But the bomb stories, that's where my favorite memories of playing music. I mean, it's great when you play a great show, but most of the stuff I remember are from the bombs, or for something crazy going on, or there was a fight. Mm-hmm. The last gig we were playing,
there was a
playing,
fight.
And everybody just starts screaming and running out of the room. I'm like, well, should we just wait it out? And
should we join?
Yeah, they figured it out and came back. But yeah, that's the fun stuff.
Yeah.
And also, we're such big fans of comedy. We'll tell jokes in between the songs. So, I mean, I've bombed 1,000 times on those, but at least I have a song to play, Right. Like, come on, and a 1 and a 2 and a.
Yeah, I'd love to do my jokes and then have a song in between my jokes. I'm just going to play a little song between the jokes.
If it goes good, you do another joke. If it's bad, just back into the song.
Yeah.
I used to tease the guitar acts when I, because you do shows and a bunch of people are on it, and people would be on with guitars, and I would say, just hiding the silence with his guitar.
We have found that the guitar acts aren't necessarily the most popular with comedians.
I don't mind them. It's just, I love to tease them. It's amazing how many comedians don't have a good sense of humor. They get mad at you and get all fired up. It's crazy. Take themselves too serious.
All right. So how do you get out of Canada?
So let's go back a little bit. I don't know why I'm so flustered. You guys got me all flustered.
It happens to everybody we talk to. Yeah, don't feel bad.
I don't know if the bus is coming at me or driving away. So I am doing shows in Vancouver, and I've been doing probably about 4 or 5 months. And this guy comes to town. He's a headliner, and his name is Pat Bullard. And he's a big time comedian out of Toronto, now living in Los Angeles, writes on the Roseanne show. And he pulls me aside after seeing me, and he says, you got to do me a favor. You got to do everything in your power to get out of Canada. And I'm like, what? Because it didn't even occur to me at that point. Right. I'm just like, okay. And I'm like, do you want to tell me why? Because there's just nothing here. You got to go. And I'm like, all right, well, that's pretty honest. So, I have that in my head. One of my friends gets booked at the Montreal Comedy Festival, and I tag along again. You know, I just go. I'm not booked, but I'm a tag along. I'm sleeping on people's floors and stuff. And at one of the shows, somebody doesn't make it in time at the Comedy Works in Montreal, and somebody says Ian's funny, so they put me on to fill until somebody shows up. I can't remember who it was. And a club owner seen me from New York, and he came up and he gave me a card and said, if you come to New York, I'll put you on stage. And I was like, boom, Pat Bullard said, whatever you do, you got to get out of Canada. So I'm like, I'm going to New York. So at that point, I'm dating this girl in Vancouver. We're actually living together. I'm using the phone cards and putting coins into the payphone, talking to her. She says to me, you need to come home right away. We need to talk. I'm young enough that I don't realize that means break up and have her do it on the phone. Right. So I hitchhike back to Vancouver. Oh, she breaks up with me as soon as I walk through the door. Oh, I'm like, okay. So I try to figure everything out. It takes me about 6 months. I get a paid gig in Montreal for $800. And I spend the rest of my money getting to Montreal. And now I've made $800 Canadian. And I'm like, this is the time. This is when I do it. I take my $800 Canadian, I turn it into $600 American, and I buy a train ticket to New York City. And
so nobody there that you just straight in, no place to live, no friends yet, just that one guy that gave you the card.
One guy, just I guess it's young enough, driven enough, and naive enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. 21.
So, yeah. So I get on the train. I'm on the train. We get to the border. They ask me what I do. For some reason, I say I'm a writer. I don't say I'm a comedian. I say I'm a writer. I'm going down to write about New York City. And they're like, okay. So I get through that. I get to New York. As we're pulling in, I see all the graffiti on the walls. See how filthy that goddamn city is. And I'm like, well, I've made a mistake. I'm about to die. That's what I was saying. And I don't have a place to stay. Nowhere to stay. I've got $600 American. Train pulls into Penn Station. I get off the train. There's a piece of paper on the ground that says youth hostel, $14 a night. I grab the piece of paper. I call them with one of my coins. They're like, yeah, you can check in after 11. I end up living there for 4 months.
My God.
I start calling the guy. I got the card. I call him, and I keep getting an answering machine. So I hang up so I don't waste my
quarterback,
my coin. Little do I know he's given me the booking line. So everybody just leaves messages except for this one douche from Canada that just keeps calling and hanging up. Right. So he finally answers it and he goes, are you the person that keeps calling and hanging up? And I'm like, yeah, this is Ian Bagg. You told me to come to New York City and you put me on stage. He goes, oh yeah, I remember you. Yep. Come down tonight. So I'm like, okay. So I go down and I just bomb. We're talking about bombing. This Canadian kid goes down there, talks about Canada at 91-1, and people are just looking at me like, who is this tool, right? And he comes up, his name's Lucian Holden. He comes up to me afterwards and he says, there's something there. It's going to take a while for you to get it out. I'm like, okay. He said, I'll put you on stage the rest of the week every night. And I'm like, okay. So by the time the next week rolls around, it's getting better. Takes me another week. And he's like, puts me on again every night. And now it's rolling. And I'm figuring it out. And now I'm showing up with people from the youth hostel. So every night I have a different entourage.
That makes sense. Yeah, turn them over.
Yeah. So one night I've got Germans. One night I've got Japanese. One night I got French people. And the people are like, who is this weirdo? Why does he keep showing up with a foreign entourage? So I just keep going on, and I'm like, this is great. And I'm under the table. I'm working under the table. He's also paying me, I think, $20 a night cash under the table. So I'm like $14 plus $6. Yeah. So I'm just like, this is the best. And I'm just walking all over New York and just having a great time and feeling great. And one day he comes up to me and goes, hey, tonight we're going to have a showcase for Conan O'Brien, and you are not on it. And I'm like, well, thanks for telling me that. He goes, here's what's going to happen. There's a set right before the showcase. You're going to do that set, right? And the reason you're going to do that set, if they don't show up, you kill time until they show up, right? And if they do show up on time, they will see you. Not forced. They'll just see you by accident. So I'm like, oh, okay. Don't think anything of it. Go do it. And afterwards they go, we want to speak to Ian. And they asked me if I'd like to do the Conan O'Brien show. And I'm like, this is probably 4 weeks into me being in New York, maybe 6 weeks.
So at this point, do you think I'm going to be a millionaire inside of a year? This is easy.
No, okay. It's different. It goes like this. It goes, well, I'm not legal.
No.
I can't do your show. I'm just,
no.
Right. And they say, we'll help you get your work papers. No problem. And that's when I'm just like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is where I'm supposed to be. So yeah, that's how I end up.
Do you remember any of the guys that you were, when you were doing those first few weeks, were there comedians that you worked alongside that you still are buddies with, or do you remember any of those guys? That was
you know what? I don't know if it's like this in music where you kind of, as you grow, you lose touch with people because you're out doing your own thing. Some people, I have some tight friends, and some you don't. Like I remember that first trip hanging out with Bonnie McFarlane because she was from Canada.
Oh yeah.
We started the same club. Jim Gaffigan was another guy that was hanging out with me at that time. But I remember the shows. I remember having to go because they'd give me the check spot, which is basically the check got dropped and they'd pay their check while I was on stage, which, just builds character. Right. But it would be Dave Attell, Dave Chappelle, Ray Romano, Red Johnny and the Round Guy, Jeff Ross, like all these guys that were throwing heat like you wouldn't believe, and me not knowing, Nick DiPaolo, like all these just these monsters of comedy, and me, yay, going on.
But it had to be kind of helpful for you being surrounded by that, because you just look around and go, well, this is the bar that is set, and this is what everybody, not knowing that you're surrounded by some of the all-time greats when history writes itself. But at the time you had to just go, oh, well, I guess I got to be this good to do this.
I just didn't get it. Once again, that naive, driven, and just young. I'm like, yeah, I'm part of these guys. Yeah. And all these comics hanging around going, who is that guy? How did he get in? And then earning respect from those guys as I built. So it was pretty cool. I just wish I had some of those lists with the names on it where I would just, it was huge. I remember there's a podium there that the greeter would sit at. And it was a bar, it was a small New York bar. And then with a showroom, it was called the Comic Strip. And people would come in and they'd at the podium, but we would sit there. The comics would sit there when the seater had moved away, because it was comfortable and it was a place to write. And I'm sitting there one night, and in walks Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy just walks in, and I'm sitting at the greeter's table, and he's like, "Is Lucian here?" And I go, "No, he's not." And he goes, "Oh." And it's quiet for a second, and then I just take one of their mailing list cards, and I go, "Would you like to join our mailing list?" He goes, "No." And turns around and walks out.
Hysterical.
It was so fun. But I got to play hockey. People found out I was Canadian and they played on hockey teams. They'd put me on their hockey teams, and I had no equipment. They'd find me equipment and I'd play, in somebody else's equipment. We had a good time. I ended up coaching in New York City. Hockey was another thing, that, helped me out because I was playing hockey, and then they put together a police fire league, and it was during the day. And they put together an actors team, and suddenly I was on this actors team with Tim Robbins and a bunch of people. And I never said what I did, but they obviously knew that I was an actor. And Tim gave me an audition and put me in his movie, The Cradle Will Rock, which got me into SAG. So, I don't think I have the greatest career, but for a kid from a small town in Canada, like up near Alaska, I shouldn't be where I am living on the beach in California. It doesn't make sense.
You've done pretty well at this point.
Yeah. I haven't broken through that level that we all want to break through, but it's pretty fun. It's pretty great.
What was the hostel like living in?
Awesome.
I've never really, what was the condition like? Was it just, you just had one room? Did you share a room?
No, there was a bunch of different rooms. I stayed in one that had, I think, 6 or 8 people in it. We all had bunk beds, and and then there was places where you could lock up your valuables and like your money and your passports and stuff like that. And I remember I would always have new people come into the room, and I was there for 4 months, and they were like, "You've been here a long time. We don't mind, but you're gonna have to go at some point." And I'm like, "Okay." And after Conan said they would get me my work papers, I ended up having to go back to Canada, and then they got the work papers, and then I came back and I ended up getting an apartment. So, yeah. But it was great. I remember this redheaded English girl came to town for just a sex weekend. She was just there, and she just made it announced. And I remember in the morning. What's that?
Did you fuck her?
No, I didn't. No, I was honestly, I was so young. I think maybe that one girlfriend was the only one girlfriend that I had ever had. I was just like, girls, but I just remember she got up and it was completely light, and she walked to the bathroom completely naked. This redheaded girl with this big red bush walking through, and I'm like, this is the best life ever.
That's hysterical. And I guess at that point, other than that, you're not spending a lot of time at your home or apartment anyway. You're out doing things.
No, you're not. Well, what's great about you
sleep and pass out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you have to be out a certain amount of time during the day. Like you couldn't be there from 11 to 5.
Oh.
So, yeah. So it was cool.
What were they doing between 11 and 5?
They would clean the
jizz from the sex weekend.
Yeah. Get the red pubes off the floor.
Now, did your mom know you were staying in a hostel?
Yeah. Are you going to tell my mom? Don't tell my mom. Yeah, no, I don't know if they did. My mom was kind of a hippie when she was younger. She was a nurse. She was a travel nurse. My mom's from Australia, and she traveled Europe and Canada and America doing nursing, and met my dad by picking a name out of a phone book and saying, "I know your cousin." She called him up and said, "Your cousin told me that I'm supposed to come over and have dinner with you." That was his parents, and he was there, and they met at that dinner.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did somebody really tell her, or the cousin really tell her that?
I think so. I think so. I can't really get the whole story. Like, she's got some interesting stories. Like at my wedding, I walked by and she was talking to somebody, and all I heard was, "And that was the night I spent with Wayne Newton." Like that. So I'm just like, oh God, what the hell, Mom? Just keep moving. At the same time, I'm like, man, Wayne Newton would have been way easier to get into show business with than Gary Bagg. Gary's auto supply. And
I guess that was before cell phones and stuff like that. So we're back to the quarter and the phone or writing a letter as far as keeping up.
Yeah, I would talk to them. I would talk to them via phone on Sunday nights at a certain time because it was cheaper. And I remember I would talk. There was a payphone in the club at the bar. I remember I'd sit at the end of them and talk to them.
Wow, that's a trip.
That is a trip.
So did you start breaking out and doing the road from there? Because I'm sure you've done a ton from when you started and coming up. You had to have done a ton of stuff on the road.
I've done like in Canada, I did so much road because there was so much, but it was just shit money. And then I did the road when I came back from and did Conan. I did colleges and realized that I didn't want a fucking thing to do with colleges. No thanks after that tour.
Better guarantees, but miserable experiences.
Just showering yourself afterwards, trying to get the filth off, and it just wouldn't. You're just a hooker, and it was just like, it was not good times at all. Just making people with no life experience try to figure out life experience, and just, you got to be a certain kind. My one friend, Chad Daniels, actually, when he does colleges, writes the price he's being paid on his hand and looks at it.
That's the way to get through it.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, and then I started doing clubs, I remember, I'm going to go back to the college tour. I remember I did a college in Tennessee and it was fun, but I remember after the show, the hotel was next to a gas station and they had fireworks. And I was like, well, this is interesting. And I go to the guy, I go,
you got to be attracted to the fireworks with your background.
Yeah. I was just like,
blow some shit up.
Yeah, let's get this and get this and that. So I got a bunch, and I had some friends staying with me. They came on the road, thank God, and we were having fun. And I said to the guy at the gas station, I remember saying, "So I can light these off?" And he goes, "Well, not here." And I didn't. And I was like, "Well, yeah, it's a gas station. Why would I light them off here?" So I took him back to the hotel and then blew him up in the parking lot, just like. And the funny part about it was, this is how much I'm into fireworks. I just wanted to blow them up because it was the middle of the day. I didn't give a shit about the colors. I just wanted to hear the bang and see what kind of explosion they made. Right. So I did that for about half an hour, and then we went up and we were watching TV, and all of a sudden there's a knock at the door. I open it. It's cops. I'm like, "Hey, how are you?" He goes, "What are you doing?" And I go, I look over the TV and go, "Watching when planes crash." And he goes, "Were you blowing up fireworks?" And I go, "Yeah, about half an hour ago." He goes, "Why would you do that?" I said, "The guy at the gas station said I could. I just couldn't do it at the gas station." He goes, "No, you can't do it in this community. You can't do it in this community." So when he said you can't do it here, he meant not in this community. But I was, of course not at a gas station. Why would I blow him up at a gas station?
That's hysterical.
Yeah. So he's like, "Well, you're not," like, he's yelling at me. And I'm like, "I didn't know. I asked if I could blow them up." He said, "Not here, at a gas station."
All right. So how do you get from New York to California?
Well, so I was working, doing shows. I was also starting to book TV commercials and stuff like that. So I come out to LA every so often, and I noticed every time I was in LA, the weather was exactly the same. And I'm like, huh. Then I go back to New York and it'd be sweaty and look gross, or it'd be freezing, or it was just never fun, and it never smelled good and stuff like that. Even though I love New York, I had a great time. It made me the person who I am. I still think it's a shithole. And I just went to my agent's manager. I go, "Am I allowed to live in LA?" And they said, "You're actually allowed to live wherever you want." And I said, "I'm moving to LA." So summer 2001, I moved to LA, and and I just fell in love with it immediately. And yeah. That's how I ended up there, by being told that I had freedom.
And the weather, it seems to be a common thread with people that are up there. They're all like, "Well, fuck the Northeast, the winters. I couldn't take them anymore."
Yeah, I didn't understand it. Once I got here, I'm like, huh. And then people would say, "Well, don't you find it expensive?" And I'm like, "Well, that would probably clean Florida up if they put some taxes on it down there. Get rid of some of the scumbags." So, but yeah, I went from New York to LA, so I didn't know what expensive was. I just know you pay to play is what I know. And I'm a fan of, if some place gives you an opportunity, you put back into it, and that's, that you make it so the next person has the opportunity. So it's still a great playground. So I've never been concerned about paying to be in a great place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing I want to ask you about is, I mean, your style of comedy is a little bit different. I mean, you do, it seems like a crowd work. I know it sounds like a hacky term or whatever, but
Sure does when they say it. I'm just like, shut up, you fucking assholes.
Yeah, but it's like you're one of the few that has that take on it. That I don't know. Explain your process, because most people sit down and the ones we've talked to are, some work the crowd, but they're craftsmen. They sit down and write jokes. You don't seem like the type of person that even writes jokes down. Like you probably have a few in your back pocket when whatever's going on. But you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure you've got some go-tos when things have a lull, but explain like how you arrived at this style.
So in Canada, when we first started out, they would make us MC. So it went from, you get a guest spot, then you'd middle, and then you'd MC. So the MC is very important, right? In Canada. An MC down here will do about 10 minutes. Up there, they do 20 to 25 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very different. And they insisted when we started emceeing that you asked 3 questions. You asked, where are you from? Who's celebrating something? Who's never been to the club before? You had to ask those 3 questions. And I just found the conversation with people very natural. It just worked for me. And I never, when I first started out, I was influenced by, at the time, Stephen Wright. Oh, yeah. I was very one-liner, very deadpan. I used to hang out with Mitch Hedberg. We used to kind of float around together in Vancouver, Seattle area, because we were just a couple long-haired kids that had the same style.
And that's 2 writers right there. Those 2 guys.
Yeah. So I was always into writing great jokes. That's right. I said I have great jokes. I was into writing jokes, but I wasn't always good at editing them. They'd miss for whatever reason. But as you said before, when you play music, you like to have a little conversation. I would have the conversation in between the jokes. So, and it started out very, very small, and it just kind of grew into this beast. And now the jokes are kind of the in-betweens, and yeah. So that's how that started. But what the way of my show works is there's a destination I want to get to, right? There's a couple different cities on that map that I have to hit. It doesn't matter which road I take to get there.
Yeah.
That's how my show works.
Wow. It's like the Grateful Dead kind of.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. But I also am very, if I ask a question, I want to hear your answer. It's not a prepared question to have a joke to.
Yeah. You don't seem like you're doing setups when you're doing stuff. It's like
but you know how to get there. Yeah. You know how to work the crowd to get to where you can start your joke. Is that? Well,
yeah. So basically the joke is just a huge footprint, and then the footprint is in a snow, and it just gets bigger when you pull it out. You know what I mean? So that's basically what it is. But, sometimes I'm like, I've had this before. I can say this, use this again. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, it's the conversation that leads to a funny interaction, which leads to a joke, which leads to me building a character that this person is. So they become a character in my show.
I like that. I feel like I would know you more if, there's a conversation happening between you and me, or you and someone around me, I think it's cool.
However, I bet it messed up. I mean, I'm sure there's comics that won't let you do a gig with them because of that.
Is that the case?
I know Todd Glass would be one, because we just talked to Todd Glass, and he's like, I won't let anybody do crowd work because they don't want any crowd work. And if you go up before somebody and start it, then
Yeah. I wouldn't open for Todd anyways. He's but I a couple of my buddies like Gaffigan, he will not let me. He's like, hey, Ian, do you want to come on the road with me? And I said, can I do crowd work? And he goes, no. And I go, well, then no. Yeah. No, I don't want to go. And I've had companies say, hey, we'd like to do a television special with you, but you're not allowed to do crowd work. And then I say to them, well, I see that you've done Jeff Dunham. How come you guys let him use the puppets? Because that's his most funny part, and mine is the crowd work. And they just look at me like I'm the biggest asshole ever. So, yeah. But it annoys me when people say you can't do crowd work because that's my funny. That's my muscle that I'm known for.
Well, do you think it stems from just that there's not many people that are great at doing it? And I'm sure there's a lot of young comedians that go up and think that they can just go out there and do that shit and be funny. And there's
a lot of old comedians that do it too.
But I mean, there's very few people. I can't think of anybody else really that does it as much as you, as consistently, as funny as you, And I guess maybe there's a stigma attached to it just because there's so many hacks that aren't very good at it.
A little bit. And I think doing the where you're asking somebody because you have something prepared, people think that's crowd work. So they associate that to being crowd work. I associate crowd work to being a conversation that I have, and I'm not trying to demean the people in the crowd in any way. I'm trying to make them my friend.
Right.
I'm trying to create this character that out of this story they tell me, so that I can bring it back in later on, So
it's strange because people are okay with improv, and that's almost what this is. You're just using the audience to bounce off of instead of
which is cool. That makes it more fun for the audience, I would think.
I think so. I get why people don't want me to open up for them. The monologists don't want me to open up for them because now I've opened up a can of worms.
You're the fun one.
Yeah, I'm the fun one. It's true.
People like you more because it's fun and they feel a part of the show. And
a little bit. Yes, they become part of the show, and it's hard to get them back into the can afterwards. So,
and it goes back to how it makes you feel, right? If a show with you makes them feel fun, and they're going to remember that part of it maybe and like you a little more than they would like just somebody talking jokes at them.
I hope so. But I've had people snap that, what I'm doing is not comedy. Like I've had people snap in the crowd. You're not prepared. Yeah. You're not prepared. And I'm like, lady, I'm way more prepared than you think I am.
I don't think any of the comedy really works. You can almost sniff out the fakes that you're talking about doing the jive setups that they're trying to get to. But even somebody like we talked about Doug Stanhope earlier, he is dark, but he is having fun doing comedy. It's that part comes out. It doesn't seem like he's screaming at you or telling you anything. It seems like I am really good at this, and I am having a ball up here, even if I'm angry sounding.
I had somebody ask me, a younger comic, they asked me the other day for advice. And I said, you got to have fun. Like, it doesn't matter if you're the darkest comic in the world. People aren't going to like you if you seem like you're not having fun. Like if you're just loving telling this dark story, your personality is going to let those words get by more, So,
it's more believable.
And also it's got to make you laugh. Like, are you doing comedy or are you doing,
This is full stroke already. We're gonna hit you with the battle.
You're gonna get me. I'm like, oh God.
Later.
There's just somehow one person's shows have kind of leaked into the being cleared for comedy, and they're not comedy. They're one
YouTube stars
show.
Or just people trying to make a point
TikTok.
instead of trying to make people laugh.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even think TikTok, and I think that stuff is funny, and I don't necessarily believe it's stand up, but they should have venues for those people to be able to do their thing because people want to go see them. You've created something that people want to be able to be part of. So give them something to be part of. The problem is most of those TikTok, YouTube stars, when they have their fame, their crowds are below drinking age. So venues have a tough time making money off it. Mm-hmm. So that's why you see comedy clubs or venues kind of, we don't want those people. Right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So they have to go to theaters, and then you got to find, they got to be able to sell those theaters. And sometimes there's that, there's that in between area that between clubs and theaters.
We know it very, very well.
That gray area.
But it is interesting. It's kind of like a parallel between, because I like your comedy. I like the guys that don't have any crowd work. It's just different ways. It's kind of like Van Halen. They do crowd work. Pink Floyd, they got video stuff going on. They don't have time for that stuff. They have but they're both trying to do something completely different. And I love them both.
I think you should be able to. I don't think I don't think I don't know anybody that has one artist on their music selection. It's
like Louis Armstrong said. I think it's him. That's if it sounds good, it's good. It's like comedy. Right. If it's funny, it's funny.
It's funny. There's people that steal. They all get caught. They all come out in the wash. They get, and there's some, you can't ever, is some stuff hacky and easy? Yes. But everybody needs a first album, the crowd. So why not let them, and I'm not taking either person's side on this, but Dane Cook and Louis C.K. had that big riff, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Dane Cook is a little bit bubblegum and Louis isn't. But if Dane hadn't had that success, Louis wouldn't have had his, because the people that started chewing on bubblegum wouldn't have been starting to look for cigarettes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can't, I get jealousy. We all have it. I get it,
Sure.
but you got to realize that things build other areas. So, don't think one person can only like one thing, and don't think somebody's wrong for doing something,
I think a lot of that comes with age and experience. You just figure it out. If you hang in long enough, at least for me, that stuff becomes painfully clear.
Yeah.
Painfully clear with bad eyes.
So we're hitting up on the 1 hour mark. And before I let you go, I want to ask you, did you ever get to meet you said Cosby and someone else? I can't remember now at the beginning.
Jonathan Winters.
Yeah. That you loved. Did you ever get to meet any of your comedy favorites over these last years?
I kind of Cosby, I don't want to bring up because
I just met him recently. He was a great guy. He's a great guy.
He's
very sleepy afterwards, but
I remember after it all came out, I'm like, because at some point I found his comedy boring, and he'd do 2 hours worth of comedy. And I'm just like, why didn't he just talk to them? Why would he give them a pill? Like, you can put them to sleep with that voice. A comedian that sits down will put somebody to sleep. But Jonathan Winters, actually, I did get to just say hi to, but I got to they were at the SAG building in Los Angeles. They did kind of an actor's studio thing with him. And I was able to go watch them film it and sit in the crowd and listen to all his stories. And he was everything I wanted him to be. And his stories made me cry. His stories made me laugh. His stories gave me hope. So the big thing that I wanted to do, though, I had always heard that he would hang out at a bank in Santa Barbara. Like, he went to like his bank, and he would sit there and he would just talk to people. So I remember thinking, I want to do this so bad. I just want to go up to Santa. I couldn't find the bank. So I went looking for him. So because I had a situation where Bobby Hull, I don't know if you guys are hockey fans at all.
Oh, yeah. Bobby Hull.
Yeah. So he was in an airport, in the Chicago airport. I walked in, I got on the escalator to go into the lounge, and I'm just like, there's Bobby. My God, I gotta say hi to him. He's sitting by himself. I say hi to him, and he said, sit down.
Oh, well done.
And I was like, what? And he said, sit down, let's talk. And I'm like, he said, it never happened if people don't talk about it, and that you want to talk about it. I will always have time for people to talk about my life, because it did happen. And thank you for letting me know it happened.
Wow. That had to be huge for you.
Well, yeah. And then we sat and talked about everything from the girls in their yoga pants and in the lounge, all the way to hockey equipment and, my hometown, his hometown, and he wanted to know about my hockey career. He's just like, well, how far did you go? He goes, you're a big son of a bitch. How far did you go? And I'm just like, not as far as you would hope. So, I don't believe in that. Don't meet your heroes, because I think 90% of your heroes are heroes. They're going to be the people that you hope they were. Because I like to think that I enjoy real stuff, that I'm not tricked into somebody just faking. So
Cosby tricked all of us.
well, he kind of put us to sleep.
Yeah, he had help. Big Pharma helped him out.
You know, it's weird. And I know this is weird. I had heard these stories all like for years, how Cosby would have.
I've heard tale of that. Well, not in the entertainment business, but I've heard once it came out, people were like, well, yeah, that was sort of spoken about for a year.
Yeah. It was like, I remember once being at the Comedy Magic store and something came up about Puddin' Pops. And my wife was talking to, can't remember who the comedian was. He goes, well, that's how Cosby puts his girls to sleep. He gives them a pudding pop. And my wife, and this is when I first met my wife. So this is 2006.
Yeah.
And we were talking and she's like, what do you mean? He goes, Cosby puts girls to sleep and has sex with them. And my wife was just like, I can never have a pudding pop again. Like that kind of conversation. She goes, you're lying. He goes, and I had always heard weird stories about Cosby, but it wasn't that he was putting them to sleep. It was just that he really liked girls. So
A womanizer, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Which
it's not that out of place in Los Angeles during that time.
It's just confusing because you think he would be able to get them without making them fall asleep, you know? I mean, he's already got it.
I'm just like, how bad is he in bed that he has to put him to sleep?
Yeah.
Literally
You're not going to enjoy this, so you might want to sleep, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Ian, thanks for doing.
Please don't complain if you didn't like that joke. I'm not condoning Cosby at all. I'm saying he's a complete douche is what I'm saying. So just like
I really liked the
people don't listen to the jokes. Can I just say one thing? Because like how people are. Like I have a joke about how I was molested and people like and people boo it. And I go, why would you blame the victim? Like it doesn't make sense. Like
jeez. Yeah.
And it's like, and there's always somebody that boos it. Like there's a pedophile in the crowd going, "It's your fault."
I mean, do you think they're booing the fact that you were molested or booing you?
I think they're booing
talking about it.
I think they're booing the word molestation. I think they hear one word. I think people are triggered by certain words.
Yeah, because all of us have been molested.
Because all of us have. There we go. Not all of us. If you haven't, you should be more upset if you didn't get molested because that means you were an ugly child.
We don't have to worry about that. Our one fan is not. He didn't get mad about any of this stuff. So
Jane,
you
won't get mad. I hope I didn't bore anybody. I was just like, I was struggling for words at the beginning. I'm like, I think I'm having a stroke.
I think this was great. This was awesome.
Yeah, we had a good time. And thanks for doing this too.
And I was really looking forward to talking to you. Thank you for doing that.
I would like to get both of you on my podcast. So if you guys, I do a game show where people have a chance to become my BFF for the week. So I would love to have you guys on.
I've seen it.
I'd like to have a chance at that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll arrange it. So I'll have you on different shows so you guys don't have to have a fight when one of you doesn't become my BFF. And
although one of us will hold the other one over, it'll be held over.
We're going to fight anyway. So it doesn't matter what you do.
Actually, Raylan, you need to pipe down because one of us was Ian's BFF for a week. If I win, I'm going to be taunted.
Exactly. By the way, isn't it time we fired another drummer?
Exactly.
Please practice drums and you can come drum.
Yeah.
Please.
You've already got it. Perfect.
That's it. All right, Ian. Thank you so much
for doing this. Thanks for having me on your Black Panther Party show.
Ian Bagg is my favorite comedian, even though he didn't choose me to be his best friend when I went on his podcast.
It's a shame. Anyway, outros are stupid. Enjoy your groceries.
Free Britney.
I know your mama's name.
Don't be an asshole.
Nope.